What you may actually think is a food allergy may really be an intolerance brought on by your own body's deficiency. Headaches, hives, and watery eyes may lead you to believe you're having an allergic reaction, but a misdiagnosis could actually inflame the real problem. Here now to discuss reactions to certain fall food favorites that may surprise you is holistic pharmacist Sherry Torkos. Sherry, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, first, we've all been there. You know, we've had those cramps, nausea, headaches. We think maybe it was something that I ate, but really there are two types of reactions to food. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, that's right. There are two different types of reactions our body could encounter in response to food. We could have an allergy, a true allergy, which is the immune system reacting inappropriately to something it shouldn't otherwise be overreacting to. Some of the common food allergies people may have heard about would be dairy, shellfish, peanuts. That's another common food allergen, and those reactions can range from mild to severe. People sometimes become anaphylactic. That means their airway closes off and it's a life-threatening emergency. There's also food intolerances, and that usually originates in the gut, where something in your digestive system is not able to process a component of a food. And some of the most common food intolerances are lactose and gluten. But there's another one that is starting to become very common and building awareness, and that's histamine intolerance.
So what are the signs and symptoms of a histamine intolerance?
So histamine intolerance can cause things from flushing to hives, headache, upset stomach, racing heart. It can just make you feel queasy, nauseous. And the symptoms are tricky because they also mimic so many other conditions. So getting to the bottom of it can be a bit challenging.
Yeah. So can we test for a histamine intolerance? How does someone definitely know?
Well, you can certainly go to your healthcare provider. There are blood tests that can be done to check your histamine levels. And if your levels are elevated, it could indicate that your body is not breaking down histamine properly. And that's really what's happening. Histamine isn't necessarily the enemy. It's something produced in our body naturally. We need it for immune system reactions. But normally, histamine levels are kept in check by an enzyme called DAO, or diamine oxidase. And if you don't have enough of that enzyme, if you're depleted in that enzyme and your body can't break down histamine, that's what causes those real troublesome symptoms.
So as a general overlook, is there just a safe level for histamine, or it maybe changes for all different types of people?
Yeah, well, there are laboratory established guidelines for histamine levels, but I would say that it's not 100% accurate, and that's where it can be a bit tricky. So people can do a food elimination where they can reduce eating histamine foods in their diet, which is a little bit tricky. And I would note too that there are certain people that are at particular risk of having a histamine intolerance and a DAO deficiency. Those would be people that have celiac disease, like myself. I have a gluten intolerant celiac. They're at greater risk of having DAO deficiency. If you have leaky gut, Crohn's, colitis. Also, as we get older, unfortunately, our body has less DAO, so we can't break down histamine as well. So once you hit your 40s and 50s, you might notice that that glass of wine could set you off and you could have an unpleasant reaction. And there's also genetic factors involved. There's been some genes that have been identified to be associated with DAO deficiency.
So you just said it might be really tough for people to cut out all foods that are high in histamine, but some of us may not even know which foods those are. What foods should we look out for, especially during the fall, that are high in histamine?
Well, the bad news is that a lot of the foods that people commonly enjoy, especially at parties, are high in histamine. So we're talking wine, beer, champagne, so fermented alcoholic beverages, but even the healthy things like kefir and sauerkraut and fermented and pickled vegetables are high in histamines. Cheeses, I mean, everybody loves cheese, unless you're lactose intolerant, but cheeses are high. Aged cheeses and meats are high in histamine. Dried nuts, dried fruit, they're also high in histamines. Citrus fruit is also very high in histamine. So you can see that it's really present in a wide range of foods, even bread. So it's tough to cut those foods out of your diet, really.
Yeah, so someone like me, it's going to be really hard to get rid of all of those, especially during the fall. So what can someone do who they feel like they have this kind of imbalance to histamine? What can they do to maybe not get rid of it completely, but limit?
To manage it. So when you have a lactose intolerance, you can take an enzyme called lactase to break down the lactose. And thankfully, for people that have histamine intolerance, there are enzymes available now in North America that you can take to help your body break down histamine. And the enzyme is called DAO. And this is where you can find it, the Umbrellux DAO. Now, this is a food-grade DAO supplement. That's very important to look for when you're choosing a supplement to help with histamine intolerance. You want to take that active enzyme, diamine oxidase. So Umbrellux DAO is the only food-grade supplement that I'm aware of. You take it about 15 minutes before you have a histamine-containing meal or a beverage, and basically it just helps your body break down that histamine. So you don't have to take it several times throughout the day. You only take it about 15 minutes before you have a histamine-containing meal or a beverage. Breaks down the histamine so that you don't have the headaches, the hives, the flushing, the racing heart that otherwise occur when you're dealing with those foods.
All right, and then you have this on the table, but also some probiotics back here. How does that kind of play in?
Yeah, probiotics are very important to help support good gastrointestinal health, gut health, and we know that people that have